So right now everyone's doing a stand-up, hand-up, pair-up on their reflections of their own learning of English.
Here we go. Here we go.
Okay, so I heard some of the conversations as I was walking around, but for most of you, I'm guessing the answers were kind of similar, just based on what I heard. Does anyone care to share, how did you learn English? Carlos?
Well, I was lucky because I had an English professor teacher.
Your mom was an English teacher?
No, I had an Englishman as a teacher.
Oh, your teacher was British?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was a British man. But the method he used was kind of, it's audiolingual approach.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who was taught English using the audiolingual approach, or a lot of audiolingual? Maybe some other things too. Anybody else? Their teacher used the audiolingual approach with them? Okay.
Audiovisual method.
Audiovisual method. Similar. Okay.
Our situation.
Anything else?
Yeah, and my goals were one day to visit America, and well, I love music, so it was one of my dreams to understand what they were saying, and movies. I always loved movies and music. Music mainly because of my family; they're all musicians.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the chance to interact with somebody while I was studying, because an English girl, a British girl, went to my hometown.
Mm-hmm.
She was in a program in Rio, and she ended up going to Turkey. That is a really, really small town in Minas Gerais.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the opportunity to interact and feel that I didn't know anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
So who of you had a native English speaker as your first English teacher?
Not first.
Who had a native English speaker as an teacher of English at some point in your life? Okay, pretty much everybody. Who had travel as one of the reasons they wanted to learn English? I want to go to the United States or some other country where they speak English. Okay, interesting.
As a goal.
Yeah.
Today we're having the opportunity.
The third question is sort of related to that, having the chance to interact in English. Does anyone else want to share? Carlos said he met one native speaker who came to his town and had a chance to interact with her. Anybody else want to share any of their experiences? I think I saw Rosalie first.
Writing. That time I used pen pal.
Pen pals. Who had a pen pal? An English pen pal. How did you find them?
The English course offered a list.
Okay, there's a list at your English course. Okay. Yeah.
There was an institution in Rio when I was a long, long time ago.
When I was in elementary school, I had a teacher named Jair. I mentioned his name because he was very important during my learning. And he offered us the possibility to communicate to other students from different countries in English, to practice English in an institution in Rio de Janeiro. And we wrote some letters to them, and they sent us some addresses. And I started my communication to an Italian girl, and we had this kind of communication for 5 years.
So you were both writing in English, though, correct?
English,
okay.
yes.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
When they were foreigners in my city, I took advantage to start a conversation. When they were personal people from Israel, Latin America, I took all that advantage.
So does anyone, I do this whenever I hear someone walking down the street speaking Italian, I follow them. I can't stop. It's like a problem. Do you follow English-speaking people around listening to them if they can't? It's a chance to listen and interact. Sure. Anything else anybody wants to share?
I had the opportunity to help in organization, World Service Europe. So they go to different countries and they build hospitals, houses for children. And so I helped them with translation, but as a volunteer when I was young. And I think that it helped me a lot. So I could interact with people from Holland, Belgium. Very nice.
So having a reason to interact is also important. So we're starting to touch a little bit on the types of motivation, and we'll get more into that in the coming weeks. But some of you are already talking about how you were either intrinsically or extrinsically motivated. Do you know what those two things are? Think about the prefixes first. Like intrinsically, what's the in mean? Inside. Okay, so the motivation comes from something inside of you. Extrinsically, what does the X mean? Outside. So the motivation is coming from something outside. Okay. So I'm already hearing about different ways you were intrinsically and extrinsically motivated, which is important. Yes, Giovanni?
Yes, I have the opportunity to interact with my nephews and nieces, and because they are from Florida, they want there all the time in the internet and when they phone us, when they go to Brazil. So that's how I interact with them.
So you have family that speaks English. Okay, that's good. That's always a good motivator. Okay. So as we start kind of moving forward, lots of you thought about things like wanting to understand music or wanting to travel or wanting to speak to other people. And part of the communicative approach is really thinking about the main purpose being communication with another person. Communication for a purpose, right? So the primary goal of it is communication with others. And we talked about this last week, but just to review, other parts of that approach are group work and pairs work, okay? Role play and drama. I think you have a drama workshop coming up next week, but we'll talk a little bit about that in here as well. Authentic tasks and projects. What does that mean when we say an authentic task? Real situations, okay? So it's not something necessarily that's scripted in a textbook. It's communicating for a real purpose. Most of you, when you had pen pals, that was authentic task. You were writing to communicate with another person. Integrating the skills, so using everything together, listening, speaking, reading, writing, grammar. And the teacher's main role is the facilitator. Okay, so most of the work is really done by the students, and less of the action is commanded by the teacher. Okay? Any questions about the basics? We did talk about this a little. Okay. So now I want you to think a little bit about how you feel about this idea of communicative language teaching. Okay? So we're going to do 4 corners. Do you know this activity? The 4 corners? Back there, in that corner, I want the people who love communicative language teaching and use it all the time in their class. Okay? In that corner, I want the people who like it and I maybe consider using it or already use it sometimes. Okay? In this corner, I want the people who like the idea but think it would never work because I have 40 students and 2 times a week and no way. Or I don't like this approach and I don't see how it would work. So it's just absolutely, I don't even like it. It's a terrible idea. Okay? So 1, 2, 3, 4.
Thanks. They're not alone.
I have people who are standing nowhere. Okay, are you guys all in one, or where are you? Coach Marty, where are you? So these are the numbers. I like the idea. I love the idea. I like the idea. I'm not sure. No way. Love it. Like it. Not sure. No way. Love it. Like it. Not sure. No way. Great. Now, what I would like to have happen, those are the people who love it and use it, correct?
Yeah.
I want one of you to talk to one of these people who think they like the idea but don't really understand how it would work. Okay? You guys pair up. Go find one person from this group and tell them how you use the communicative approach in your class. Go. Just one, 1-to-1, pairs. No, so you all come up and find someone to talk to. Find someone from this group. Find a partner.
Let's go.
You okay, good.
don't have preference.
Yes, okay. Everybody find someone. Yes.
There you go. Right.
Yes. I really hope you got something out of that. I want to try to give you as many opportunities to interact with each other as possible because chances are, you know the most about your teaching situation. I am not from Brazil, I can guess. But I think it's good for you to have a chance to talk to each other. Did anyone hear at least one idea that they would like to hopefully maybe use in the future? Something that was helpful to you? Anybody? Repeat. Sure. When you were talking to your partner or your group, did you hear a new idea that you thought, oh, I like that. I might try that. Anybody? Yeah? One? Oh, Dennis, what did you hear?
My friend, Zandra, and she told me that she has 40 students in the classroom so far. So she puts one student with another in office. I don't know if there were like they are in the class, and depending on the subject that they are discussing, they have to talk to each other to say about what she is teaching.
So a pairs discussion.
Yes.
Okay.
I like.
Okay. Anything else? Anybody heard that they want to share?
I'm a little bit traditional in my classes, but I'm changing. I will use technology and Facebook, not to speak using the cell phone, but using at home, you know, to form a group in the Facebook with the days of the students' birthday and tips on English, songs like this.
There's also something, if anyone reads short stories or novels, I know that's beyond a lot of your students, but for some of you, does anyone read short stories or novels? Okay. There's also something called fake book. Fake book. Do you know? Yeah. It allows you to develop a fake Facebook profile for a character in the book. So you can tell your student, you are this character. They go to Facebook and make a profile for the character and interact with other characters from the book. Okay? They love it insanely because it's Facebook, basically. But they are not revealing their own personal information, which sometimes, you know, at least in the United States, it can be very touchy what kind of personal information students are revealing. But since it's not really their information, it's a little safer, okay? And then they can interact with each other and try to recreate the relationships and conversations between characters. It's really fun. If you've never tried it, I suggest checking it out. Okay? So, communicative language teaching is like what's popular now, and we've already talked about how things change and go back and forth. But it's always worthwhile to kind of consider trying new things, and I think as teachers, that's like our main job is to be open to change and trying new things. So that's part of what we're going to talk about next. So what I want you to think about now, in groups of 4 specifically, please do not do 5 or 3 or 6, okay? Because each of you is going to have a role. I want you to brainstorm. If you were going to make a list of concepts or principles that would create a successful language learning environment, what would be on the list? Okay? So, good books, motivated students, whatever you think would be the perfect environment for learning English. Okay? Go ahead and find your group of 4 first, and then I'm going to tell you what you're going to do. Okay? Groups of 4 exactly. Carlos, you doing that? Okay? You got 4. You are already. Carlos already was here. I ended up in one class and okay. Count off by 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Decide who is 1, who is 2, who is 3, and who is 4 in your groups. Who's 1, who's 2, who is 3, who's 4. Okay. Are you ready? Number 1. Who are the 1s? Raise your hand if you're a 1. Raise your hand. 1. If you're a 1, raise your hand. You encourage silly ideas, no matter how crazy they sound. You are the Sark Sultan of silly. Okay? Who is number 3? Number 2. You are starting support. Even if someone says something that's a little, not the best idea, you say, oh, good job, good, excellent idea. And who is number 4? You are the secretary. You should write down the ideas as they are being said. Okay? You have 5 minutes to come up with as many ideas as you can. Do you understand what you're coming up with?
We can help you out.
Ideas for successful language. Go!
I did order all on the table.
Need for a specific place for English classes that we don't have. This is a complaint, but there's another idea. Take students out of the classroom for outside activities.
Outside activities. Okay. Outside activities. Good.
Here has different kind of exercise, different level of students.
So using different levels and different exercises for your students. Okay. Fewer students. That's what she said. Fewer students. More classes. Yeah.
Breakfast.
Bring your students breakfast. Oh,
good idea.
Technology. More oral activities.
Camping trip at the end of the term.
Camping trip at the end of the term. Good. Anything else you want to put out there? Smartboard. Technology. You can, sure. What was your silly idea?
A pajama party at the teacher's house.
Pajama party at the teacher's house. Any other silly ideas that you like to share? No? Well, yes. More money. I will tell you something I just read today. In the United States, in North Carolina, they are passing a law, or they are considering passing a law, that says they're going to have 3 levels of teacher: beginner, medium, and expert, basically. The pay levels will be different for each of those. You may not teach more than 20 years, period. Really? It would make you quit after 20 years and find a different job.
No different job. You're tired.
Nope. So well, think about it. If you start teaching when you're 25, can you retire at 45? Most people can't. So that's what's happening now in the United States, in North Carolina. It's crazy. It is not good for teachers anywhere.
I thought you don't think it's
No, not you are retiring and you get money. It means you have to go find another job because we don't want you to teach anymore. Not yet. Hopefully not. But that's like the future. It is scary. Right? So they're giving us less and expecting more.
So you get prepared
and then you have yep, bye-bye. Because it will cost them less money to hire new people. So it's all about money.
And we think that the Brazilian politicians are the worst.
It's the same here sometimes. All right, well, so many of you talked about, breakfast and camping. I think we should take a small break and have some cake. Okay? And coffee. But only whose birthday is it? Raise your hand. Tomorrow. All right, on the count of 3, we will sing happy birthday. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. I made Brazilian coffee.
Oh.
But I think.
Can I help you? Sure. Tomorrow I will be here. Yeah. Have to send to me. Imagine. I have to. Can I drink? I'll deixar aqui.
That helps if they share who is not.
Oh, that's a great idea. Yes. Oh, sure. A little break, yep.
Break.
How cute. How nice of you.
There's extra frosting if you like it very sweet. Here.
Oh, thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
I love it. We love it. Everybody loves it.
Okay, now. I don't know. There's already.
Oh, let's try.
It's a very thick milk.
Here.
Yes, where did you buy these? Did you get because we tried to find and didn't find it.
It should be everywhere. Yeah.
But it's everywhere, didn't find it.
I know it's everywhere, didn't find it.
It's really good. Uma dica de coffee
Everywhere.
delicious.
Delicious.
Thank you very much.
the university and the last letter part, we don't have letter. Nobody wants to get the last part, I think that's the K. It reminds me of that. It makes me also happy. Yeah. I've heard that people that people cares, calls attention, carente em português, but I don't know how to say this. Carente. C-A-R-E-N-T-E. Caring, yeah, caring people. But how is different from the American? In Brazil, we have a saying that when you do good cooking, you're ready to make it good.
No, someone told me that from the last meeting, but I don't know.
Sabe o que é mais bonito?
Strong, just a little. You drink a lot of coffee. We don't Oh, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. Can you take a picture?
I have to make my own equipment.
Nice.
Can I wash my hands first?
Yes.
Oh, can you play the guitar? Yes. Tomorrow we need a person to play the guitar for the party. The birthday party at night.
Mas Rico deve fazer mais pequeno, não. Rico faz mais pequeno.
You can go there. The birthday party. Qual foi esse That's perfect. Nicole plays the guitar. She says she plays the guitar.
I can see.
She's going to play the guitar
The only thing I can play anything, it just stays.
Okay, so moving on. I know I probably should wait until the end, but I figured a little bit of coffee never kills people. So moving on to the next part, chapter 3. One thing I wanted to call attention to for communicative language learning before we move on, if nothing else, I think that the example that's on page 17, and I talked to the group who was in the back about this, even though it's a school in China, the teaching situation sounds pretty similar to what you have in Brazil. It's very large classes. There's a prescribed curriculum that you're supposed to follow. But I thought that this example was very interesting of how this teacher kind of took the things she had to do and worked in some communicative principles. So, I think it's worth looking at that a second time or a first time if you didn't have time to read it. But teacher took this concept and adapted it for their environment, which is pretty similar to yours. Yes.
I talking with some colleagues. This chapter was extremely hard to understand.
The third one. I'm talking. This is the second. We're moving on now to the third, which I kind of thought might be a little more of a challenge, and it draws a little more on the second language acquisition theories. So what we're going to work on now, we already talked about how, asking follow-up questions and negotiating meaning is one strategy for acquisition, or that helps with acquisition. So, we have these 12 outlined principles of instructive second language learning. So what should be happening in the classroom, right? But the language in some cases was pretty technical. So what I think we'll do, or what I was going to try to have you do, was just break it down so that each person or each group of two, each pair, was only looking at really trying to understand one. And then we will kind of come back together and explain them to the group as a whole so that everyone can understand. So I think that's what we will do, but I will also walk around to help answer any questions. When you're only focusing on really understanding one, sometimes that makes it feel a little less overwhelming, hopefully. So if you could just, with the partner, and it can be the person sitting next to you, and you can have some groups of 3. So can I have Manu and Katja, can you guys paraphrase principle number 1? So we're looking at chapter 3 now, which starts on page 31. The principles start on page 33. Okay, you're only going to be responsible for understanding right now one of the principles. Okay, so number 1, number 2, principle 2. Okay, principle 3, 4, 5, 5. 6, 7, 8, 9. 10, 11, 12. Oh, she didn't get her Did you get your cake? Good. Okay. One left. It's easy to
They don't send the documents they need to send to the department, and so on. It doesn't appears on the official.
Well, you should definitely have
man. We good.
And just be able to paraphrase it in a few sentences. That's it. Okay, if you have a question, ask.
It shouldn't be on the board, but when they have difficulties, I write the answer on the board, and then I choose the student without following without following this case. Here, there, and then make the question. The same answer just have different questions. It's very easy to help the students develop their abilities. I like to in the
Do you think that time is
No, because I still get student that you need partial.
which well, I think it's probably part of the whole time and as we go through it, paraphrase and I'm not 100% sure
my sister helped me in the dishes yesterday. Did your son help you do the dishes yesterday? No, in fact, my sister helped me do the dishes yesterday.
so they're trying to match the question with the answer. Okay, so I think that would be partially like but I think that's also of Who needs more time still to summarize their point? Okay, 2 more minutes? Yeah. I'm pretty sure. I can post the link to the website, but I think it's just fakebook.com. One more minute. This is not a negotiation. Questions? Some of them are longer than others, so it's hard to balance. Fake it till you make it. Have you heard of that expression? Fake it till you make it. So even if you don't really know what's happening, just fake it, you'll get there. Yeah. work through this together, okay? This is your chance to really understand these principles as they're laid out. We're going to see some of them here, and as we go on, you'll see them reflected throughout a lot of the other things we talk about. Again, though, this is just one person's ideas. There are a lot of people with ideas, but these tend to be the ones that overlap across different studies and research, okay? So let's make sure we really understand what they're trying to tell us, because that's going to be important as we go forward. Please ask questions if you don't understand something, and I will do my best to explain it, okay? You're going to have first go at explaining it, though. So since you're explaining the principle to the rest of the class, please don't talk to me, talk to everybody, so make sure they can all hear you in case there are follow-up questions, okay? Use your teacher voices. Okay, principle number 1, which, as it reads, is instruction needs to ensure that learners develop both a rich repertoire of formulaic expressions and a rule-based competence. Manu and Katya are going to tell us what that means. Sure.
All right, so principle 1 is to ensure learners to develop a rich list of expressions and a rule-based competence in order to be proficient, which leads to fluency and immediate functional needs. For example, sentences like, what time is it? I don't know, I'm very sorry. It makes part of the day-by-day of a native speaker, but it's also important for the second language learners. But it's also necessary to have the knowledge of specific grammatic rules for greater complexity and accuracy. It is suggested that learners use their own resources to internalize grammar and then analyze fixed sequences. So a complete language curriculum should have the development of both formulaic expressions and rule-based knowledge, because each of them has their own particular purpose.
Okay. So there are, basically what they're saying here is there are 2 parts. The first part is formulaic expressions. Does everyone understand what that is? It's like something you say that you don't even think about. It's one complete piece. You're not really thinking about the grammatical components of it. So Katya gave some good examples, like, I don't know. What time is it? They're sentences that come out without you necessarily thinking about, here's my subject, here's my verb, here's my object, whatever, okay?
Would you say, would you call them chunks?
You could call them chunks, and I believe they use that word here in the text to describe it. So chunks are these pieces that a student doesn't have to consciously put together. They learn it as one group. Yeah, a lump is another word, would be another word for it.
A block.
A block. Okay, block is more attractive than lump. Lump is a very ugly word.
I don't know.
A lump? A lump is like an ugly piece.
No, I said a block.
Yeah, you said block. Okay? And rules. So an understanding of, if I do need to make my own sentence, how should I go about doing that? Right? Okay, so it's a balance of those 2 things. Very good. Any questions about principle number 1? Your textbooks are very good at providing you with the formulaic expressions. Okay? Usually, the textbooks are full of that. Okay? A lot of times to get to the rule-based competence, you have to step away from that and get them to start thinking on their own. Yeah? Good. Questions about principle 1? Going once. Going twice.
How can our students internalize these rules? Okay? How can internalize grammar?
How can they?
To use this internalize.
Well, I mean, it's something
They don't
that
internalize.
They do, whether you think about it or not. It's something that Ken Hyde touched on in his second language acquisition talk. There is a specific order by which we all acquire grammar, no matter the language. So they sort of have this like internal stuff, and that comes up in one of the. Yeah, you're getting into number 5, right? So they do have that sort of knowledge in them, whether they're aware of it or not. But sometimes getting them to see the connections can be a challenge, right? So the more opportunities they have to make those connections, they don't understand.
How to use it? They use.
They don't understand why. Okay, and that will happen, especially at first. They may say something and have no idea why it is correct or incorrect. Trial and error gets them to that place where they think a little better. Okay? Any other questions about number 1? All right, principle number 2, Luis and Larissa.
Yes. Focus on meaning. Okay? Everyone knows what is meaning, okay? The meaning of the words. So there are 2 different senses of this term. The first one refers to the idea of the semantic meaning. What the semantic means? What semantic of
Depends on the context.
what exactly the word means? For example, I can swim. In this sentence, can means ability. Okay, ability. So I can swim. In the second term, in the second sense of this term, refers to pragmatic meaning. In the pragmatic meaning, the same example with the verb can. Can you pass the salt? It's not the ability, okay? But you use the verb can, okay? And so the third class is not. So you have 2 senses of this, 2 different senses of this term. And in the first one, the semantic meaning, the teachers and the students treat the language as an objective. And in the pragmatic meaning, they needed to view the L2, the second language, as a tool for communication. Okay? And so many theorists think that the pragmatic meaning is better for communicating.
And in addition to being better for communicating, it also, according to researchers, is more motivating because it's focused on that, construction of meaning in a different way. Yeah. Good. Luis, did you have anything to add?
No.
Thumbs up. Okay. Any questions about principle number 2? Okay. All right. Principle 3: instruction needs to ensure that learners also focus on form. With that, Carlos and Tyson. Elma and Valkyria? Yes.
It focuses on the form. That means the grammar. Focus on grammar structure. So it focuses on inductive approach to grammar and deductive approach that seeks the grammatical rules. And also structure-based comprehension and production tasks. The students have to be conscious on raising tasks, and there are methodological options that induce attention. Always thinking of a structure of the sentence and grammar points. And here they say there are considerable attention in 2 points: the provision of time and corrective feedback. This is very important.
Yeah, and corrective feedback gets touched on a lot. And we'll talk about some other ideas for teaching, and that's one of the ways that you get results is through corrective feedback to your students. They love that. Feedback is what helps them to understand, what they're doing. Good. And you have here. I think this one got very wordy. And I think this is kind of what Patricio is touching on: is how do I get my students to discover grammatical rules for themselves without teaching it explicitly? Is there anybody that already does that, when you're trying to teach a specific grammar point, you allow the students to kind of figure it out for themselves? I saw...
It's difficult to... We try, but we end by giving them the rules.
Okay.
Because I was taught this way, so
I'd love to learn a different way to teach them grammar without teaching them with the boards and.
Is there anyone who successfully feels like they get?
I think it's easier when we talk about beginners.
Yeah.
Because example, when each is example, what's this? It's a pencil. What is it used for? It's used for writing. Okay, writing. So give another example. And unconsciously they use for writing, for doing. And I hadn't explained then. After for, you have to use ing.
Right.
Because with examples, they understand them.
The difficult part is when we read.
But when you teach, example, past models, past models, because how can you explain them past models if they have problems with irregular verbs to understand how to use the third column?
Okay, so for perhaps for basic concepts, this is a little simpler to do because it's easier for them to grasp. Whereas with more complex subjects, you feel more comfortable. But I think that's what this is saying. I mean, we've already talked about how there's also this rule-based instruction. So giving them the rules in certain cases might be simpler for them and for everybody. Okay. Any questions about Principle 3?
No.
Yes.
I don't know if it's correct, but my students, they have to do with the grammar in Portuguese. Do you think that it affects the learning English?
Yes, of course.
What to do? Because sometimes when we explain something, they don't know even Portuguese. How it works.
Well, because a lot of, I mean, like I was never, I did a lot of diagramming sentences, but that's because I went to Catholic school. Most people in the United States don't receive explicit grammar instruction in English. That's why it can sometimes, native speakers, okay? You just learn it, you pick it up, it's acquisition, right? There's not always direct teaching. So that it might be the same case for your students in that they just learn Portuguese by being exposed to it. They're not explicitly taught the rules. And in fact, you find that people who know the most about their own language know it because they learned a second language. That's what forces you to learn those rules that you might otherwise not have a conscious, you know what I mean? So they may not, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's not actually abnormal. But you may find you have to teach the concept of what the past tense is, in addition to teaching what it looks like in English. Yes, that's certainly likely. Yes.
Sometimes for example, in Portuguese, we use plurals, a lot of plurals. For example, adjectives, we use plurals for adjectives. In English, no, right? For example, you say, they ask, why two blue pencils, not two blue pencils? Because adjective never use plural. And they say, what's adjective? Some of them.
Yeah, fair enough. And so you will have to teach them what an adjective is in addition to teaching them what it looks like in English. Yeah. That's not uncommon. Not uncommon at all.
And I was talking to my roommate. The book suggests the first part of the Principle 3 that learners will understand how to use S in plural because, of course, it's a sentence in the plural. But I was talking that in Japanese, they don't put S in plural. So how can a Japanese student realize that it is plural and I have to put S because in my native language, I don't use S.
Well, that goes back to when we were discussing, whether it's a new concept, it's a direct transfer concept, or if it exists in your first language but doesn't exist in the second. Those are different levels of challenge. So, you may find that certain things are easier for your students because they already are familiar with the concept, even if they may not know the terminology for it, right? Good. Any other questions about number 3? Okay. Number 4, instruction needs to be predominantly directed at developing implicit knowledge of the L2 while not neglecting explicit knowledge. Who is number 4?
Us.
Okay.
I don't know if you understood well where you try to explain this implicit knowledge and explicit knowledge. understood from implicit knowledge is that it's unconscious. We acquire this mostly for our first language. It's the one we acquire since we are little, and it's very unconscious. And the explicit will only happen, the explicit knowledge, we will put it out since we have the implicit one. But the problem is that L2, that's the language we learn later, we will always start with grammar, explanations, rules, etc. And some theories, we can say that.
Sure.
Try to say that if we use a lot of practice, we can turn an explicit knowledge into an implicit one. With a lot of practice. And I also, it is not written here, but it made me think of a deep structure, which is the same for every language, and we have them in our brains, and that's why we are able to learn several languages. We tend to use it, and it's implicit, isn't it? I don't know if I'm wrong.
No, I mean, there's a theory of universal grammar and things like that say we all have these kind of constructs across languages, right? It's the same, there are the same ideas and principles underneath it all.
Yeah.
And I think that implicit knowledge is sort of what Tice was saying. If I hold up a pen and say, this is a pen, I am writing with this pen, and then you say this is
okay.
That's like, they don't know the rule.
It's not this what I...
It's not explained directly to you, but somehow you are able to produce it.
Okay.
Okay. Eventually, hopefully, they'll have also an explicit knowledge as well, but that's not always necessary. Depends on the context. Okay. Anything else you guys have to say about?
Would you like to
number 4? Okay. So they're kind of saying, in some cases, if you do it enough, it becomes habit, and then you're able to explain it. Well, doesn't always happen, but we hope. That's in an ideal world. Good. Okay, number 5, instruction needs to take into account the learner's built-in syllabus. Who is 5?
Okay, so in Bristol 5, you must take into account the first language of the learner, because they have different rhythm, for example. Silence. And there are some ways that you can do that. So he talks about the zero grammar approach. Ensure that learners are ready to acquire the target features.
Development.
Readiness, yeah. Are they ready to learn it?
Yeah, they're ready to learn it.
Go ahead, sorry.
And as the principle 4 talks about the explicit and implicit knowledge, principle 5 focuses on the explicit knowledge.
Okay, so where does this built-in syllabus come from? Where does the built-in syllabus come from?
From your language,
your first language. Okay, yeah. A lot of it comes from your first language. Okay, so the things that you already know, but some of it is also universal, which is what we've talked about already, that students tend to acquire things in a specific order, no matter which order you teach it to them. So that can sort of be helpful in allowing your students to acquire things in an order that feels more natural to them. Yeah. Good. Anything else about principle 5?
No.
Number 6, successful instructed language learning requires extensive L2 input.
You're talking about the input. I understood input as an exposure to target language. And this part talks about the learners in SLA, second language acquisition. They must have amount of exposure or input in the target language to get proficient and not to get proficient.
depends on the amount of exposure the student has.
And how can you, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay. How to get this exposure? Okay. The teachers and the schools need to motivate students to establish a self-access in outside class time. You know, you need. We are an example of this, I think.
Yeah, especially
you
for
have to
you
try
guys.
to be exposed to in the store, at the supermarket, all the time to put in practice the target language.
And I think especially in your teaching situation where you only teach maybe twice a week, you know, getting them to try to do things in English outside of class becomes particularly critical because you have so little time with them in class, right?
And in Brazil, many English teachers, they had to like to teach in private courses, not to be in contact with the language, because in public schools we start forgetting a lot of things. You know, and you don't practice. I study a lot, but I don't have the opportunity to practice listening and speaking. No, that's so. I think that we are a good example. The exposure is essential.
Okay. There are a couple of websites I can put you in touch with as well for just for your, not for your students, but for you. But there are italki, Happy Planet, Palavea. They're all websites where you can video chat with people. So someone who wants to learn Portuguese will match up with you who wants to practice your English, and you spend half of the time chatting in English and half of the time chatting in Portuguese. So there are like many free on many websites for that. So if you want to work on your own language sometimes, you want a speaking partner or some listening practice, that's sometimes a good option too. And you just need internet and a camera. Good. Anything else about number 6? Okay. Number 7 also requires opportunities for output.
Okay, here they are mentioning 2 authors that they say about the output. It's very important too. Not talking only about input. Okay, and here they are listing some things that is important for acquisition. They say that output can obligate learners to pay attention to grammar. What else? It can help learners to test hypotheses about target language grammar, and some many important things to help to automatize the existing knowledge.
They say that they can try to create their own discourse, their own voice. So the output is important because they have to practice. They have to speak and externalize.
Sure, yeah.
Express everything. Try to speak. And as they have to pay attention on the grammar, they are going to try to create the sentences and create a long discourse, not short sentences.
I think something that can be very helpful, although also terrifying for many people, this idea of auto input, where you're giving input to yourself because you're hearing yourself talk. Sometimes when you're talking, it's too much to focus on at once, but recording yourself and listening later is a very helpful tool for lots and lots of reasons, even though it makes you feel horrible listening to yourself. It can really tell you a lot.
One thing that I like to do when it's possible is to record my classes and then to check what the mistakes that I make. Because of course we make mistakes, even the teachers make mistakes. And I like to record some of the classes and check the things that I have to improve. Because we are not conscious.
No, you can't be. You're focusing on, you have 40 students in the room. You're focusing on making sure they don't kill each other half the time. Yeah, it's too much to think about. So yeah, recording is helpful, but also for your students, to have them record their voices and listen to themselves, or send the recordings to each other if they feel comfortable with that.
Nowadays we have some interactive CD rooms that provide this tool for students. The book I use with my students, they can record their voice in the dialogue from the book.
Okay.
Yeah. And so they can do it at home, and sometimes I do it in class too. They record, they choose the character they want to be, and so they record their voice, and then they play, and they can listen themselves talking to the character. Yeah.
Fun. So your book already has something like that built in?
Yes.
Good. Any other questions about number 7? All right. 8, opportunity to interact in the L2 is central to developing L2 proficiency.
Okay, we built up a spidergram and interact in second language. We need to create new resources, correct feedback, make input comprehensible, push learners to modify their own
inputs,
their own outputs.
Okay. Yeah.
And we need to have small groups, construct collaboration, and we need support. And the main word for that would be socialization.
Okay.
And it helps when it has topic-based, because you need to have something to talk about. Yeah, push them ahead, because they will be always waiting for something to happen, but they will never cause the thing to happen. Yeah, and topic-based would be the context. Yeah, we would have to give them the context and provide opportunity to use the language. So after talking about the context, we should put it into reality. Yeah, we should bring it to real life and ask them about situations they have faced during their life.
Okay. So I heard some good keywords there, like groups, context, relating it to real life, and giving them opportunities for social interaction. Structured social interaction, which you also touched on, is very important, giving them a specific topic to discuss or something of that nature. Good. Any other questions for number 8? Hang in there, you only have 10 minutes left. Principle 9, individual differences in learners.
So in principle 9, we wrote it like this. Teachers should match the instructions according to students' attitude for learning, which means flexible approach to learning. The teacher should instruct for specific students to keep it motivated, and don't let the others one dismotivate them.
Sure. Demotivate them. Okay.
And then after research, as your explanation here, in this principle, the teachers simply need to improve their quality of teaching in order to work intrinsic motivation. I think it's more difficult to work with this than extrinsic motivation. It emphasizes the intrinsic motivation, and it creates a good atmosphere inside the classroom.
Okay, so a good atmosphere, and also thinking about the different levels or different personalities or different interests. Students have a lot of differences, right?
Yeah.
Many different kinds in one lesson. Yep. Okay. Any questions about 9? Number 10. In assessing learners' L2 proficiency, it is important to examine free as well as controlled production. Who's got number 10?
We understood that it was on this principle that on
importance of investigate the way you work in classroom. So you have many different kinds of productions. According to that this production can evaluate you yourself as teacher and considering different ways.
And what are the different?
According to the best, the most appropriate way to evaluate proficiency would be the pre-constructed response. For example, communicative task. In this case, you can observe the way, how much your student has improved the knowledge of grammar, communication, and other aspects.
So yeah, they're both important. I mean, it's helpful to have both kinds of assessment. The things that are, a little more focused on controlled production, which is where they're given a very specific type of response, and also allowing them to expand on their ideas a little bit more. Both of those things tell you something important in different ways. Good. Anything else about number 10? Okay? Good. Number 11, need to engage collaboratively and talk about problems and try to agree on solutions to them.
Yeah, this principle we understood that, for example, if you want to have a new meaning for something that you have learned, you must engage in a collaborative and talk about linguistic problems. Although all learners follow a very similar order and sequence of acquisition, some of them have different idea about something. For example, subjective nature. Because I understand like this. For example, I know something already. And then I have a new knowledge of this because I have talked with everyone, with you. So I build a new knowledge about this new subject. So I change the way I think. So I have a new knowledge about this subject. And this happened because I change, I interact with the environment.
Yes.
Even this. And so we have the opportunity to develop a new identity. For example, I can change as a person after the
So collaboration sort of, might present new and different ideas that cause you to think differently about things you've already heard. It might cause you to formulate rules in your own mind. That probably doesn't happen a lot for your students, but you never know. Okay? Good. Any questions or anything else about 11? And the last one, short and sweet. It needs to take into account the subjective aspect to learning a new language.
We understood that learning a language is not only to know about the objective aspect, and there are the subjective aspects too. Like we have to have an emotional connection with the language. We have to know how to use it. You have to know to learn it, to like it. Like most part of the teachers here learning English because we like it. Music moves you want to learn English. So there are some help me.
That was great. That was wonderful.
Here there are some examples like plays or literature and things like that.
Yeah.
To encourage our students to like English.
Do you feel like your students like English?
Yeah.
Some of them. So that's the challenge, is trying to get more of them to like it.
And when they don't like it, they really like telling you, I hate you. And saying, okay.
They're enthusiastic about their hatred. Okay. So as we move forward, these are kind of always in the back of our mind. How realistically can we implement these things? Obviously, we can't always be doing all 12 of these at the same time, but they're kind of there in the background.